Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Vegas 113. In this matchup, we have one of the most intriguing matchups on the card, and quite frankly, one of the toughest fights to predict for me. We have Jean Matsumoto taking on Farid Basharat. This is the kind of matchup that quietly tells you a lot about styles clashing in the bantamweight division specifically. You have Jean Matsumoto, who is very smart, very technical fighter, pretty well rounded, and still very young. Uh, Only 26-year-old. He still has plenty of room to grow, and he already has 18 fights. He is a pretty well traveled veteran. I guess wouldn't be the right term, but a well traveled MMA fighter for sure. Meanwhile, you got Farid Basharat, who is definitely a prospect in the bantamweight division. A little bit older than Matsumoto, about 28, undefeated at 14-0, and similar to Matsumoto, pretty well rounded as well. Very skilled, very technical in all phases of the game. And on paper, this looks like two well-rounded fighters. Like I said, both can do just about everything. I'd say Jean Matsumoto is more of a striker with good grappling and some good wrestling to him, while Basharat, I would say more of a wrestler. He has some striking to him for sure, but I would definitely say his wrestling and top game are probably the bread and butter of his. Overall, I think when you watch their tenacities, you realize this isn't about, who has a puncher's chance or anything like that. It's about control, pace, and who's comfortable dictating the fight. And I think when you have all that together, I think Basharat has the tools to do exactly that. Now, really quickly, looking at their last five. For Basharat, as I said, he's 14-0, so he is 5-0 in his last five fights, beating Damon Blackshear by decision, beating Calvin Rodriguez via submission, and then these other three are by decision. Taylor Lapulus, Victor Hugo, and most recently passed the Chris Gutierrez test last October in what is probably his biggest win in the division so far. For Matsumoto, he is currently 4-1 in his last five fights, specifically 3-1 in the UFC, submitting Dan Argueta, beating Brad Katona by decision in a fun fight, then suffering the first loss of his career last February against Rob Font in a close decision where you could argue Matsumoto should have won it, but they gave Font the nod. And then most recently beat Miles Johns last August via close decision. And so overall, both guys, I wouldn't say have too many big wins to their name. Obviously, for Matsumoto, beating Miles John is impressive, and nearly beating Rob Font, who is a good gatekeeper as well, is a pretty good accolade. I would say Basharat right now has the better wins, just because being Chris Gutierrez, former ranked contender, is I would say a better win so far for him than some of Matsumoto's. But without further ado, let's get down to the breakdown. Starting with Matsumoto, he's a pretty textbook fighter in many ways. Matsumoto's measured, precise, very disciplined. He likes to fight at range, pick his shots, and stay defensively responsible, but at the same time, not afraid to get into a brawl, as you saw with Brad Katona or Miles Johns for that matter. And I would say Matsumoto, his strength lies in accumulating small advantages over his opponent, landing cleaner punches and staying composed. And Matsumoto is comfortable in long fights because he doesn't waste energy, but his reliance on a controlled pace also makes him a bit predictable. And against opponents who can force the pace or be able to gain more damage off of his, let's say, controlled heavy style, can definitely be a challenge. Now you look at Farid Basharat. Again, he's not too different in terms of being able to have sharp striking, but also mix in his grappling and wrestling pretty seamlessly. And Basharat, he's the kind of fighter who can switch gears from striking to clinch to takedowns without really losing any momentum. And all I say, Basharat, he's definitely aggressive, but he is not reckless, is for sure. He pressures intelligently and punishes mistakes very good. And he's also, I would say, he's physically stronger than Matsumoto, which also helps in clinch exchanges and controlling positions on the ground. I think that's probably the biggest aspect of this fight. Who is the better grappler and wrestler of the two? Because I would argue Basharat, not only is he going to be probably the bigger of the two, I would also say he's the better top control wrestler and grappler. While Matsumoto, he's got a good gilly. For example, he submitted Dan Arguedo with one. But and he was able to control Rob Font for a lot of portions of their fight. But I don't know if he's going to be able to control Basharat the same, because Basharat, like I said, very strong, very good with good understanding of balance, and very good at reversing positions if needed. Now, just looking at how they clash, I think the key question here is pace. Matsumoto wants a slow structure fight where he can pick shots and avoid chaos. Basharat, he can change up his tempo. Now, he can fight at a similarly slow pace, but if he wants, he can fight at a faster tempo, push forward, land strikes, and close distance where he can impose his strength. And I think early on, Matsumoto might have some success keeping the fight at range, landing crisp counters and testing Basharat's timing. As while Chris Gutierrez is a really good striker, especially with his leg kicks, I think Matsumoto's the better overall well-rounded striker in comparison to some of other Basharat opponents. Excuse me. Simply due to the fact that Matsumoto has such a good ground game, and typically speaking, that he's able to either A, reverse positions, or 2, threaten with submissions, that he's able to impose his striking. But I think Basharat's pressure is suitable, but is, subtle but constant in this fight, as he doesn't need to knock Matsumoto out, or all Basharat needs to do is just force exchanges, walk him down, and make his Matsumoto's defenses defend more than he attacks, in enough to tilt rounds in his favor. That's the biggest thing about this. Both guys, they're not primarily finishers, at least not at the UFC level. Both of them right now have one finish, and that was submission. Both guys are very good round winners. They know exactly what to do to win the fights in their favor. Basharat, whether it's use his wrestling and impose his will, or just win on the feet. Matsumoto, kind of the same thing. Either good striking or good ability to use their grappling. Another factor in this fight is versatility. Matsumoto is mostly a striker, I think, and prefers the fight to stay upright. Basharat is comfortable on the mat, in the clinch, and in messy scrambles. And if he closes the distance, he can take the fight to positions where Matsumoto has to work harder. And that combination of pressure, strength, and grappling IQ make Basharat dangerous not just for one explosive moment, but across the entire fight. I think cardio also plays a factor, as both of these guys are mostly 3-round fighters. They mostly go the decision, so both have good levels of cardio. But I think maybe if I had to say, I think maybe Matsumoto has better cardio, just because we've seen Basharat kind of fade in the 3rd round, like you saw in the Gutierrez fight. But obviously that doesn't happen that often, and usually even one tired, Basharat's able to do just enough to to either win the round or survive, and because he has already won the other 2. So that's another factor in this fight. But overall, for my prediction, I think early on Matsumoto might look comfortable. He could land clean shots, avoid big damage, and keep the fight at his preferred distance. But I think as Basharat starts pressuring, controlling position, and dictating pace, the momentum slowly shifts, as Basharat doesn't need to land a huge knockout punch to take control. Just constant pressure and smart exchanges are enough to win rounds convincingly. And I see Basharat probably taking over the 2nd and 3rd round again. He is known to fade a bit in the 3rd, but I think he can do enough to get it. He'll likely walk Matsumoto down, force exchanges on his terms, and control the fight where where the fight happens. Again, whether it ends in decision or he finds an opening for a late finish, I think Basharat's consistency, pressure, and ability to fight in multiple ranges give him the edge. So, for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Farid Basharat, and I'm going to pick him via decision. Again, he's not primarily a finisher. He does have submissions, but again, at the UFC level, he's mostly been a decision winner. So, most likely, you are going to see... Man, I don't know why I keep yawning. You are going to see the fight go the distance for sure. I will say this, though. This was definitely the hardest fight for me to predict. I think both guys are very good operators. I think both of them are very highly skilled. And I do think both Matsumoto and Basharat will probably be in the rankings one day. That's why I'm a little shocked how the odds have Basharat as a 2-to-1 favorite. But I'm not the odds makers, and they certainly seemingly know more than me. You know, that's why the odds are what they are. But once again, I'm gonna pick Farid Basharat, and I'm gonna pick him via decision. Well, that being said, that's been my breakdown of this matchup. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think's gonna win. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening, and remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.